A lot can change in 5 games. Just before the Six Nations, I made some notes on Ireland's World Cup hopes. Between their borderless control of Europe and Leinster consistently beating down teams with Jeff Bezos money, Ireland were continent leaders without need for a backstop. And then I made like Michael Jackson and locked my work away in a vault. Now, everything about that sentence seems unfortunate. Last year, Ireland won 11 of their 12 games, and even their one loss against Australia proved no issue after they came back and beat them the next week and then again the week after, just for good measure. And after a win that would have been the biggest Irishman slays the black story of the year, but for Big Liam opening his big mouth, it felt momentum was really building a year out from Ireland's jolly down to Japan. 5 games later, however, and a lot has changed. Ireland were knocked over by England and then wiped away by Wales, both teams tactically tackling Schmidt's heralded master plan and casting Ireland aside. So, what happened? Why? And can Ireland turn it around in time with the World Cup just 5 months away? Let's start simple, let's start small. Because every hospital bed across the Isles was being used as overspill for crocked Scots, very little attention was paid to just how many injured players Ireland had this Six Nations. This was perhaps because it seemed to be a Thanos-style decimation, one where many are lost but all the key players survive. Ireland fielded 36 faces this Six Nations, their most under Schmidt, with Inviso bastard Peter O'Mahony being the only man to see out every game. This wasn't nearly as big a crisis as it could have been, however, with Schmidt having built a bank of centres and second rows and having Leinster's infinite supply of quality flankers to call upon. However, their ability to dip in and out in most positions just served to highlight what was, for me, the one real mistake Schmidt has been making the last couple of years. In any tight game, Manawatu's favourite 4D calculator has remained reluctant to bring off his star halfbacks Jolly Pop Sexgim and Conor Murray. The pair very much the cornerstones of Ireland's whole game. Joey Carberry, Sex Gloves understudy and a man with a name that sounds like he should be a character played by Shia LaBeouf, has been Ireland's undisputed second choice since 2016 and yet has only started one major test in which he was hauled off the Sexpenny at 57 minutes the moment momentum started to swing against the Irish. Below Carberry, things get bleaker still. Jack Carty and Ross Byrne, the pair tussling between 3rd and 4th, have just 88 minutes of test rugby between them, which, coincidentally, is the exact runtime of the film Crank starring Jason Statham. Contrast this to New Zealand, who made up for the loss of second choice Topa Wanga last year by giving Richie Mo'unga Lord of the Rings level minutes and giving Damien McKenzie test time operating as a 10 when he was wearing 15. Or to Wales, where third in line to the throne Prince Patchell has 7 starts to his name. Carberry showed in Scotland he can cover for an injury, but come Cardiff, with Carberry having been dusted, Ireland faced another problem as Sexplank was playing with the accuracy and composure of a dead trout. Schmidt remained reluctant to bring on Carty, a man with so little experience, but in doing so, he continues to prevent him ever gaining that experience, putting the Carty before the horse, if you will, by keeping his worst performer on the pitch. It's a catch-22 that one day may well see them caught out in their 22 when a game is on the line. However, this is pretty much entirely in character for former teacher Schmidt, the hyper-safe sort who seems like the kind who give left-handed kids detentions for using right-handed scissors. As I've previously discussed on this channel, Ireland's play is extremely structural, and that structure is built around high percentage plays and eliminating risk. It's almost Moneyball rugby, a game plan devised by some mad computer the size of James Ryan to minimise the chance of losing. The idea is to wear a team down systematically, but whereas Wales do so for 80, looking to give themselves an edge in the final quarter, Ireland try to tire teams on a more micro level, each play a new attempt at attritionaling the opposition. Think of it as though Wales are waging a war and Ireland a series of battles, or Ireland's approach as being like an evening of tantric sex versus Wales as being a serious, meaningful relationship. So what is Ireland's system? To explain it simply, Ireland keep hold of the ball for very long periods of time, setting up the field to make sure they always have support where they're going to carry, and they only carry where they have support. They work the ball from one side to the other, being extremely patient, staying inside the 15-metre lines at all times, only venturing wider outside those markings if they intend to kick or utilise a blatant overlap. This is all safety first. Joe Schmidt knows he can't trust key fields with pointy edges or nearby touchlines, so, like a true school teacher, he doesn't let anyone near them. They look to eliminate all risk. Ireland don't offload, they don't drive risky kicks, they don't pick anyone who would sanction such buffoonery. If you don't buy into a system, you're out the squad, and anyone particularly programmable is in, which explains the test careers of Superfly flyer Simon Zebo and waddling emu Dave Carney, respectively. This adds up to something that's normally hugely effective. But Wales have possibly the best defence in the world at the minute, and it took their sheer organisation to hold it, and England were original and aggressive, flying up in a diagonal pattern designed to push Ireland to the touchline, taking away an element of the control they crave, and forcing them wider than they're comfortable. An injury-hit Italy team still managed to emulate this, and it was effective enough to see them ahead at half-time. This is slightly alarming for Schmidt. If Italy, assuming we can still call them Italy considering Parise wasn't playing, can push them like that, then you've got to worry that the Sanzar nations might be taking notes. However, the system has one human element in the form of the aforementioned Julipad Sex Squad, the only man trusted to take risks. He isn't a maverick fly half like contemporaries Russell, Barrett, or even Carberry, but he has a huge box of tricks, even if most of the space in it is taken up by loops. However, as any number of robot invasion movies have taught me, the danger with putting a human in charge is that they get emotional. And this Six Nations, we saw how emotion, namely anger, can negatively affect Sex Clown's game. If you can get to Sex Fanny as England, Italy and Wales all did, then it's like you're taking the controller out of the human's hands and only playing against the CPU. Sure, it's on the hardest difficulty and it's no walkover, but you're now able to predict the AI's every decision. Now, I'm vastly oversimplifying everything, but Ireland were only predictable in this year's championship because they showed us how they play last year. They won a Grand Slam and they beat the All Blacks, but they put a target on their back and gave the world a head start on working out how to beat them. Schmidt started to implement his grand strategy in late 2017, the moment they passed the halfway mark in the World Cup cycle, giving his players 2 years to learn what is actually a far more complicated plan than I'm making it sound. All last year, I had a feeling a coach more analytical of the opposition than Steve Hampson would work them out, but my instinct was that it would be Rassie Erasmus and South Africa in October, right in time for the customary Irish quarter-final World Cup exit. Instead, Eddie Jones and Owen Farrell stormed into Dublin, bullseyed the target on their back right away, giving the world a way to quell the Green Storm months early. And then, after being shown they were worked out, Ireland changed nothing. They played exactly the same, causing as many surprises as Israel Folau would if he came out as a flat earther. Throughout the championship, Ireland remained tactically identical to last year. Unlike everybody else, England changed up their defensive plan completely and evolved their attack over the 5 games. Scotland pulled from a huge evolving pile of plays. Italy continued to adapt game on game. Wales found countless new ways to wage and win that war. And France scarcely put together 2 minutes of the same strategy. I mean, look at them. Ireland, however, just plodded forward, rarely adapting to the new grass beneath their feet. This sounds bleak, but I actually think it's a very backwards piece of hope for Ireland. Joe Schmidt is an incredibly smart coach, and I refuse to believe he would stand idle as Ireland's pressure points were worked out and repeatedly pressed. For me, if Schmidt isn't reacting to his work being ripped apart, it's because he's choosing not to. I get the feeling that he's sitting on something, that he has the next evolution of the Irish game plan sorted out, but we've all seen in the Six Nations what a risk it can be to put your plans out in the open too early. So rather than unleash his fully formed master plan and prevent defeats in rounds 1 and 5, he took the hit, losing the games but preserving the Schmidt state secrets. The tricky bit is done. He's taught his team the foundations of the plan, and the foundations were strong enough to see them tiptoe close to number 1 in the world. And those foundations remain good enough to beat most teams in the world, whilst they hold back the more fiddly bits until his 31 rock up for their Japanese jolly, with secrets preserved so the likes of Townsend Joseph and everyone beyond the pools can't write a counter program on a computer the size of Richie Gray. That, of course, is speculation. Joe Schmidt might be absolutely out of ideas, or he might be scrambling now to try and find those extra elements after being exposed in a way he didn't anticipate. But what I do know, however, is that if Ireland have it in them to win 11 games last year, then they have it in them to win 7 more this year. Because whilst there may be errors on the screen of the Irish OS right now, we all know a lot can change in 5 games. But 7? That could be a whole world of difference. Some actual rugby in a rugby video. Who'd have thought that would ever work? Who'd have thought that would ever catch on? Thank you very much for watching that, and thank you beyond that to everyone that supports the channel on Patreon. I've had quite a few new people flood in since the Israel Folau video went up, so thank you for doing that. Additionally, thank you to everyone that said such lovely things in response to that video. I had some really lovely messages that kind of affirmed why I've done this channel and why I felt it was important to make that video in the first place. I also had quite a few toxic comments, and I had one person that just commented saying, "Keep out of politics, nerd boy," which is genuinely my favourite comment I've ever received on any video. So I know you didn't intend it as such, but thank you very much. That made my day. Beyond that, this is part 7 in an ongoing series on all 20 teams in this year's Rugby World Cup. So if you are so inclined, stick around. I'm going to have the next one up next week on a T2 Nation in a pool that we have already covered with one team. So that's coming very soon. Beyond that, keep up. There's more Six Nations stuff behind us. There's more stuff, as I say, coming forward. There's the 6 teams have already done from the World Cup. There's loads of stuff.